Challenge.
Hello, I'm O Speaks. If you're new here, like, subscribe, share. What's up, Uncle L? What's up, Island? Island Milligan, Phoenix Rising, Trupac. What's up, everybody? So this one's going to be different. This is going to be a historical presentation. I'm going to be teaching today. I do offer a trigger warning in advance because people have preconceived notions, and my goal is to get rid of those. How you doing, Shay? Well, let's start with the title. Title of today's live is an MLK History Class Edition, a closer look at Charlie Kirk's words, Facts versus Lies Part 2. Charlie Kirk said some things, and someone else brought it up, and I shrugged it off, and I was actually hoping I didn't have to do this live, but they're still pursuing this angle that he's a racist. How you doing, Ms. Baker? That he's a racist because what he said about Martin Luther King, and we'll go over that in a little bit. Before we get there, I just want to recap where we're at and why we're here. My last live, I did a presentation on how the Black community is being used again, as always, in this political thing that has nothing to do with us. And they actually got us losing our jobs. What's going on, Free Jay? They got us losing careers. They got us ruining lives, young kids, college kids' lives over a guy that they're being told to hate. And how they did that and how they presented that was they created all these little clips of his words out of context to make him look racist, sexist, anti-alphabet, all this other stuff. It's not true. And you'll see a lot of people on YouTube, IG, just a lot of people in general making videos to prove stuff wrong. What's up, Baker Man? And it's needed. And the reason it's needed is because you can't just let people smear someone and lie and get away with it, especially when it doesn't represent the person and they can't defend themselves. So if he was alive, I would not be doing this live stream. He already defended those words. It had been cleared for a couple of years now, and I don't see a need for anyone to defend a man when he's here to defend himself. And it also goes for Martin Luther King. So before we get there, like I said, this is just what they're doing. I don't like our community even being involved in it because, like I said, this has nothing to do with racism. This has nothing to do with black or white. And here we go. Kids on college campuses, kids all over social media, black kids are they're hurting themselves. And I don't understand. Well, I do understand it. It's racially charged. And they're showing that they're anti-racists by speaking out against a dead racist. And it's nasty. People are losing their jobs. Even, I think yesterday, Jimmy Kimmel just got canceled. So I may have to do a whole nother live back on freedom of speech because while, yes, these people are hurting themselves, Jimmy Kimmel, Stephen King, there's just a lot of people who are losing a lot of money, and there's a lot of black kids losing a lot of opportunities. I'm not going to celebrate that either because I do believe in freedom of speech. But like we talked about on the last live, that doesn't get rid of the consequences. You're still going to have to deal with the consequences of what you're doing. I'm not a cancel culture guy. The left is feeling that right now. They're so used to saying anything that they want and inciting literal violence that they're actually surprised now that it's coming back on them. And ironically, it's not even from the right so much. It's more from their jobs. Like, it wasn't ABC that fired Jimmy Kimmel. All of the affiliates said we're not gonna air you. We're gonna air a tribute on Charlie Kirk, and it's like, ooh, that's what that is to me. What that looks like is a bunch of people are done, fed up. They're fed up with the smearing. They're fed up with the racism. They're fed up with all of whatever this is, because this is different. We have not seen this happen to the left. I don't know if ever. Maybe in the 70s with the hippie movement. But that took a whole psyop to do that also. Not going to get into that. It's cool to see people sticking up for someone. I'm not a fan of the canceling stuff. I'm just really not. How you doing, Miss Eve? It is. I just saw somebody say something. Yes, and that's not my goal by any means. That's not my goal. I'm really not trying to make people angry, but at the same time, like I said, you can't just go after people and have other people mad at this person and they weren't wrong, or it's just their opinion, and it goes in every direction. You are entitled to your opinion. You should be able to say it without getting hate, getting canceled, getting mad. Now, celebrating death will get you completely different outcomes. I promise you, every time. I promise you. But and in my opinion, it's all wrong. Always, it's always going to be wrong. It's all wrong. Before I do that, I wanted to talk about. We went over the shirt, the fake shirt that the shooter was supposedly wearing. They changed it to make it look like it was a Trump shirt. And it wasn't. It was Photoshop. It was clearly Photoshop. I showed how it was Photoshop. The Halloween picture, they said, "Oh, he dressed up like Trump." That's not what happened. It was not a flattering costume of Trump. He was not registered to a party. He was registered to vote. He hadn't voted in any recent elections. His parents were or are registered Republicans, but they've actually been amazing. Besides turning him in, the father, I think is supposedly. I don't know this one for sure, but there was a report saying that he's given the Kirks or his wife and his kids $1 million or something crazy like that. You can be good parents and have a kid just go wrong. That's not normally how it works, but it does happen. Normally father, mother, kids do better. That doesn't mean that doesn't guarantee it, but that's normally how it works. In this case, it looks like the son just had radical views and something horrible happened. And they're clearly sorry about it to the tune where they're giving the man's wife and kids $1 million. At least that's what I read. And I saw a report on it. His own family member said that he was turning radical left. And for whatever reason, people are still trying to make this about Trump. Nothing to do with Trump, but they're making it about Trump. They said that he was not trans, and all of the efforts, not all the efforts, but a lot of the efforts by the media are to get it away from the whole trans issue and turn it back onto Trump and on the right and MAGA, to the point where the MSNBC guy got fired because he said it was probably, or he didn't say probably, he said it may have been a supporter, a MAGA or a Charlie Kirk supporter celebrating, and somehow that led to him shooting Charlie Kirk. That was a really weird one, but Jimmy Kimmel did the same thing, and now he's most likely not coming back, and that's wild. It's wild. All because they want to control a narrative and go against reality. Like, we see it. We now saw his partner. We now saw these texts, which I'm gonna have to do at least a video on those texts because those don't look real to me. But that's besides the point. That's a whole nother conversation. We went over the black pilot, what turned out to be a lie. He never said I would not get on the airplane if there was a black pilot. We went over that in detail to show that that was taken out of context. You could still disagree with what he was saying, but he did not say that. He did not say it that way. That was also the DEI conversations. Again, you guys can disagree with what he was saying, but to call him racist based on what he was saying, I think any rational person can watch that conversation and say, all right, yeah, I may have misunderstood, or I just didn't know that that's what was going on. How you doing, Ms. Just J? It clearly wasn't out of ill intent, and he was giving his opinion, and we should not cancel people for their opinions. I just especially when they can't defend themselves. That it's really, really off-putting to me. Now all of a sudden, the young black liberal media figures, or whatever you call them. I don't know what we would call what these people are, but Jamel Hill, Breakfast Club, Down Low Hughley, Don Lemon, they're all coming out and doing what they do best. And it's working to an extent, because I'm still seeing black kids get up and hurt themselves by going. I mean, there was a young lady who went to jail. She hit somebody over this at school. She got expelled and then ended up going to jail for battery. It's like, over Charlie Kirk? Really? And then she said she didn't even know who the guy was. Total waste. And it's frustrating watching that. There's a black boy who was at one of the vigils, and he went to school and he got kicked out of that school. So, like I said, this is all ugly, but worse than that, it's unnecessary. It really is. This has nothing to do with our community. Nothing. They figured out a way to make it about race, and it's frustrating. It's frustrating to watch. So, with that said, Don Lemon is going around clearly trying to get attention and trying to make all of this about gun legislation, which is, I don't know. But again, I think he just wants the attention that other people are getting, like Jimmy Kimmel and Stephen King, and he's trying to get canceled. And because he has his own podcast, he knows it's not going to happen. So he's out there just seemingly begging for attention. With that said, let's watch and see what this guy's doing. And he clearly has his own motivations. He's part of the community that Charlie Kirk spoke against. So whatever.
Yeah, I do.
And what do you think of what happened to him?
You know, sometimes revenge is a dish best served cold. I hate to celebrate someone's death, but when you talk about guns rights and you talk about how much the Second Amendment matters to you and it impacts you, like, what do you expect, you know? Sympathies to his family, but this is why we need gun control.
One of my friends said on social media, he died in a world that he wanted.
Yeah, he said it himself, right? There's a whole quote that's been floating around about, like, sacrifices were made for the Second Amendment to still exist, or something along those lines, right?
And I played this part of this one before, but I wanted to play it again because this is Don Lemon's angle. That quote had nothing to do with what they're talking about. It had to do with the military. How you doing, KTC? It had nothing to do with what they're just saying. But again, this is what he wants to talk about. He's going to try to force his narrative out.
It's an ad-lib, but yeah, this is what happens. You reap what you sow, and you know, it's sad that someone died, but also, hey, you know.
What do you say to people who might say that you're unsympathetic and you need to be more human about it?
I don't know. Reread slavery, rewatch Roots. There are so many different eras of American history and in America where worse things have happened to people. You know, and we've turned a blind eye. You want us to erase the Confederacy. You want us to erase all these different things. But why should I have more sympathy with someone that you don't know pain, really? This is the worst thing you could think of. You don't understand what other people have gone through.
So you don't know pain, really. So if you get shot in the neck in front of thousands of people and bleed out in front of your kids and wife, it's just a consequence of what exactly? This is what staunch ideology looks like. Everything is through the lens of how they see politics. It has nothing to do with gun rights. But they're going to force that narrative no matter how bad a situation is.
Do you think that this will make a difference with getting people to actually sit down and talk about some sensible gun laws?
No, unfortunately not. You know, it's going to galvanize the right. You know, they're going to place it on some like leftist extremist or something like that, and the conversations that need to be had won't be had.
So the conversation that needs to be had is guns, not political discourse and free speech and being able to have conversations and talk things through and agreeing to disagree. That's not the conversations that need to be had. It's the gun conversation that needs to be had. Unfortunately.
Someone on Fox News said, I think it was Jesse Waters, said that we're at war with them or they're at war with us, meaning liberals.
Yeah.
You think there's going to be retribution for this? Are you concerned about that?
Politically, I think what we see happening in D.C. and what the threats that the president's making in Chicago are a prelude to something that could be worse, you know? Think about like 1984 with the thought police. You know, this is the era where we're coming in where they're censoring what you could say on social media. They're, you know, certain hashtags are immediately flagged. You know, there's going to be a reckoning. Hopefully, it won't be a violent one, but it'll be a political one.
What do you?
Ironically, Charlie Kirk was killed and is dead because of his speech and censorship in the worst way. They shot him because of his words. And that guy is talking about hashtags and how bad it is that hashtags are being deleted from social media. Complete contradiction of what he said, but anyway.
What do you think would happen to Charlie Kirk?
It's just messed up, totally messed up. You know, that was messed up. Like, nobody deserved that. He definitely didn't deserve that. He was a good guy.
Do you think he was a good guy?
I think he was.
You
Only
think?
Kirks you
Good
recognize
morals.
is Captain Kirk.
The what?
The only Kirks you recognize is Captain Kirk. I don't know Charlie Kirk. I don't know who
You
that
don't know who it is?
I don't know who that is.
I know who it was. Like,
I only know about him when
all of us have flaws. I can't really tell you what to believe in or how to feel. Like, everybody's having a human experience. Like, why knock him for having this human experience or what he believe in?
Even though even though he says things that are anti-women, black, all that.
I can't judge him for that.
You can't.
I can't judge.
Look how surprised he is. You're black. He says things about you and racism. Like, clearly, instead of just doing the interview, he's trying to force her to think like him and change her thoughts. Really? You think he's a good guy? Even though he's racist and anti-women and anti-gay, like, what are you doing here, man?
Judge him for that. But I can use judgment. He didn't deserve that.
Right.
Yeah.
He's a human being.
Yeah,
You are very spiritual.
You know, yeah. I can't go left. I can't go left with that.
No, you sound like, you mean left, going
Yeah,
left,
like,
not left.
because I'm
right.
humanity. I'm humanity and love first.
No, I love that. So the first person I spoke to here didn't want to be on camera, and he said, I can't judge him because I'm not God. And so let him, whatever the reaction is, if the government wants to give him a state-like funeral, if they let him do it because God is the only judge. And
Yeah, like, nobody really can judge him.
yeah.
And, like, I kind of, like, seen him before all of this happened, but I don't see what everybody else was seeing. So, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey.
And the judgment that person who was anonymous was talking about was condemnation. It wasn't talking about you can judge someone's character, and you can speak on someone's character, but judging him for his words and now that he's gone, it is up to God.
That's how you feel.
Have a good
It's
one.
nice to
Okay.
see
How you
you.
feel?
You yelled at me.
I did.
Do you know Charlie Kirk?
No, I don't.
Charlie Kirk is the Turning Point USA. He's a very conservative right-wing activist. He was shot today at a college gathering in Utah and killed.
I'm disheartened by that because he's a human being. I don't condone the death or any killing of anyone. That's wrong.
Regardless of their political views.
Regardless of their political views, we're all humans.
What should we do about guns?
We definitely need to have gun control so that we can eliminate violence.
You think this will make a difference?
Absolutely.
You do?
I do, because the attention is here. I think and I hope that it will allow people to take it more seriously and do something about it.
Talking to folks about.
See how you see how he went straight to guns, Just Jay? Why they always trying to take our guns away so outlaws can remain armed while responsible gun owners can be defenseless. Exactly. But you see what he did? When they're speaking either neutral or positive about Charlie Kirk, he brings up guns. He tries to sway the conversation to what he wants to talk about. And this is more along the lines of the people that he likes to speak with.
The reaction to Charlie Kirk's death, his killing, his murder. How do you feel about that?
I feel like the country is doing entirely too much to honor him. We were talking earlier when we were at brunch that the flags are at half-staff, and we didn't understand why, considering that he wasn't a political figure, not an elected official. So we just really didn't understand that.
Agree. I think the country is doing too much. And I think it is an effort to divide, to make it more political, to draw sides, rather than what he actually brought to the table and what he stood for.
Do you think his rhetoric was harmful or hateful or?
To speak in division, a lot of the MAGA language, right, and causing division within our country.
Yeah.
I believe the people that would say that have not experienced what others have experienced. And so when you learn to look through someone else's eyes, you become careful what you say. And I think as a race ourselves, we have to be very careful over and over and over again, but no one is careful about how they offend us. And I won't say no one, because I don't want to put everyone
You're generalizing, not
generalizing.
Yeah.
They're not careful about how they are offending us or looking at things through our lenses.
Why do you think it's so hard for them to understand? Because they just can't understand, like, what do you mean he was offensive? What do you mean he's racist? What do you mean he's sexist? Like, they just can't understand why some people are conflicted about what happened. And no, he shouldn't have died, but damn, y'all, as you said, y'all are doing too much.
Yeah, live by the sword, die by the sword. But I think it's hard because, like you said, you haven't walked a mile in our shoes. So sometimes it's hard to understand from another person's point of view, right, if you have not lived that life.
Yeah. It seems always harder, though, for us.
Yes.
It is always harder for us.
For us.
And I would also say if you've been shown and dealt a lie your entire life, you know, by the time you're 20, 21 years old, you believe what you believe. You've been raised in an environment where those are your beliefs. It's really hard and triggering to think that your family, the people that you've been raised around, the people that you love are wrong, right? So it's hard to believe that. And so I believe hearing those types of truths are very triggering for them.
Wait a minute.
And everyone is allowed their opinions. Everyone is allowed to express their opinions. They are. If I said I cannot stand keyboards, and you disagree, you take my words, and we go back and forth, that's fine. If I never said that, and somebody else says that I said that, and you get mad at me, that's a whole different problem, because it's not fair, and it's not true. So yes, you can still have your opinion, but it's wrong, because you're basing it off of a lie. And that's what's happening right now when you have these clips being put out there by this whole other agenda designed to get Black people to look at this person some kind of way, when most of those people who can't stand him and who are coming out and speaking out against him were not talking about him the week before he died. That's where the issue is, and that's why this has been a much bigger deal than normal circumstances. Live by the yeah, that's so this is his true feelings, and one of those ladies was saying her what he agrees with, and he's about to say it right here.
Why are you treating Charlie Kirk like he's a monarch, like he is actually a member of the government, that he is deserving of a state funeral, that he is actually deserving of the honor of having flags lowered to half-staff, that he is deserving of the honor of having the Presidential Medal of Freedom, an honor that's usually for war heroes, of people who have made major sacrifices to the country.
It's not for war heroes. What's going on, KMC? So, and again, he's a journalist. So it's like, okay, how do you not know that? Why are you just making stuff up? I don't understand.
And fought in times against things that were wrong when it wasn't popular.
There has been an announcement made on the Twitter, or it could be Truth Social, I don't know, about using this photograph. And it's about who is going to host Charlie Kirk's show tomorrow. I'll give you 3 guesses. Let's see. Which one do you think? Not that. Probably not your first guess. Maybe your second, but probably not. But all right, I'll just give it. And the winner is. I mean, look, I feel bad for the guy's family. It's sad. He should not have died that way. I don't believe in political violence. But they are trying really hard to make him into some sort of civil rights icon. And you guys have heard of the phrase, you're doing too much. If you have to work that hard to
turn someone into something, that means that they're not that thing. Because those types of honors, like names like civil rights, whatever Glenn Beck said, civil rights icon or civil rights leader or whatever it is, those things are earned. They're not just bestowed upon people. They have to actually do the work, not be bigots, not say awful things about people. But so that's my 2 cents. And then tomorrow you're going to hear J.D. Vance's 2 cents when he hosts the show. So let's see what happens.
So again, he's clearly trying to get attention, in my opinion. He almost seems jealous or envious. And KTC just said something that I wanted to touch on. I don't understand why that was brought up. And that's one of those things that I was just talking about where you're making this, not you, but they put this out there as a narrative as if it's to slight the black officer when it's completely unrelated. Officers get amazing funeral services. They get honored like very few other human beings in this country. One has nothing to do with the other, and they put it out there on purpose so black people can say, wait a minute, that black cop died and they're not doing all this for him. It's intentional. I'm telling you, it is intentional. And they're trying to force this divide. It's just what they do. What's up, G Will? This is what they do. I saw that too, and I'm like, why are they putting that out there? How do we know what they did for that officer in his city or his state or wherever he is, or sheriff or town or valley or whatever, wherever what happened with him happened? How do we know? How do we know what they did? What I would offer as an alternative to that thought process is Charlie Kirk influenced millions of people to do something that they hadn't even been approached on doing before, which is think about their votes, take into consideration other things, external things, other than my family always votes this way, so I'm going to vote this way. That's it. It sounds minor, but no one else has done it before he did it. So you do, which is a great thing, which is really good. The people who were putting these stories up didn't even say where the officer was from. So did they research it, or did they just put it out because they found an alternative race and vocation or whatever, and put it out there just to put it out there, just to make it look like we're doing too much for this guy. Who is this white guy? What is he doing? That's why it was put out. It wasn't a national story. It was a narrative. That's what it was. What's going on, Mercy? So, Don Lemon, whatever. What's up, John? He clearly just wants attention. He's begging for attention. And I wanted to put that out real quick before he goes on Piers Morgan, because I'll probably end up doing a live or at least a video on that, because he's going to get slaughtered. Very few hypocrites are on TV like Don Lemon. And I wanted to put that out. He's just begging for attention. And he's trying to say inflammatory things so people invite him out. And apparently Piers is going to do it. No one else is going to, because they know what he's doing. He's miserable. That's just who he is. And he seems envious or jealous that a 31-year-old had a much bigger impact going to college campuses on a chair talking to kids than he ever did at CNN all the years he was with CNN. I think he was, 10 years, 15 years over there. And I think that's just what he's trying to do. And then I showed on my last live some really, really, really horrible pastors who were speaking on things not from a Christian perspective, but just giving their opinions, which again, you can have your opinions, but if you have a role and a title, you should still fall in line with that, especially when the title is pastor and you're a Christian. So I wanted to play a highlight of one who I believe did it the right way, whether he agrees or disagrees with me. This is how I believe you should present yourself. Let me pull this one up. This is Bishop Patrick Wooden. Let me pull this up. There it is. Spam. Bam. Bam. Why isn't it showing? Should be showing. There it is. All right. Let's listen to him. It's not that long.
If everything completely goes away, how do you want to remember? You might die. Everything just goes away. How would you, if you could dissociate one thing, how would you want to be remembered? I want to be remembered for courage, for my faith. That would be the most important. The most important thing is my faith. Christ is not just grace-focused, he's simultaneously truth-focused. He goes up to the woman who had a career in selling herself for sex and said, sin no more. Now, imagine today how much trouble you would get in if you would go up to somebody and say, stop sinning. No, you're being too judgmental. No, you're actually being Christ-like. One of the reasons we're living through a constitutional crisis is that we no longer have a Christian nation, but we have a Christian form of government, and they're incompatible. So you cannot have liberty if you do not have a Christian population. I have 30 seconds left to live. I'm dying from a gunshot wound. But what would you actually want to tell me? I have 30 seconds left to live. Boy, you got 30 seconds. In 30 seconds, you're about to meet eternal judgment. And there's only one way that you can get bailed out of that. It's not all the good things you did or the moral scorecard. It's whether or not you have Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. And that's the only thing that's going to matter. And so you got 10 seconds left. You're dying from a gunshot wound. And you ask the question, who is Jesus Christ? And the answer to that singular question, who is Jesus Christ, is the most important question for everyone in the audience. Not how much money you have, not how much good stuff you do. It is, who is Jesus Christ? You might say, oh, Jesus was, a teller of good tales, or Jesus was a good person, or Jesus was a historical figure. None of that's going to cut it. It's whether or not you repent and you ask Christ to come in as your Lord and Savior. That's the only thing that will save you from eternal death.
Those are the words of a Christian. Christians want to be remembered for their courage in the faith. Some of his political positions may differ with yours. Some of his political positions may differ with mine. But does that mean that we should assassinate them? Every Christian that I know of who is a part of the Democrat Party that I know of who does not oppose or make it known that they oppose the party for supporting transgenderism, homosexuality, abortion, and all those things, I don't think they should be shot. I don't think they should be assassinated. Say, well, he was a racist. Well, I know him personally enough to know that that's not the case. But I will say this to you, and it takes a little work just a little thinking to do this. Every conversation that is racial is not necessarily racist. Every opposing view on race is not an opposing view because a person may be a racist. It may be that they just simply have an opposing view. But if he was a racist, and there are many, there are people who are racist and bigoted on both sides. Does that mean now we need to go find people who we think are racist and gun them down? No, because you might have to shoot your mama. Or your daddy, or even yourself. You can't celebrate things like that. My son-in-law, my daughter, my grandchildren, I knew him up close and personal. They're part of Turning Point. And they were beyond the veil, so they wouldn't have been involved with a racist. Not everybody black is for DEI. Well, he opposed DEI. DEI have benefited the trans community and leftist white women. Only 4% of blacks have gotten an increase in a job with DEI. Who is reaping the benefits of that are liberal, leftist, white women, and the LGBTQ plus community. Amen. And I'm telling you right now, when I was in the hospital, I wanted the best person working on me. I didn't want nobody working on me who was there to fill a quota. So we need 3 more of this complex. No, don't let that person work on me. I want qualified, you don't hear me, people. I thank God for my leader, the presiding bishop of the Church of God in Christ. He released this statement on behalf of the Church of God in Christ, and he is the only person who can speak for the organization, the Church of God in Christ. And he said this in light of the commentary surrounding the passing of political activist Charlie Kirk. It is important to clarify that any posts or statements from individual leaders that do not reflect love, healing, and compassion are not representative of the official position of the Church of God in Christ. He said, as followers of Christ, we are commanded to let love be the guiding force in all we say and do, even in moments of disagreement or division the church must stand as an agent of healing, a beacon of light and reconciliation. Our denomination's voice is one of compassion, not condemnation. Thank you, Presiding Bishop J. Drew Sheard. And I responded to him yesterday when I saw this. I think it was just kind of him to put that out there. And I would say to Christians, the Bible teaches that we do not render railing for railing. You know, that little book, the Bible. I know in most churches now people don't even carry their Bibles to church. Apparently they're not reading it either. The Bible teaches that we do not render railing for railing, nor evil for evil. If you thought the person was evil, we don't render evil for evil. But the Bible teaches that when we are cursed, we bless. The Bible teaches that we are called to be a blessing. Many of you Christians out there have hurt your own witness by behaving in an unchristian manner.
And I just wanted to play that because that's how, and I'm part of the Christian faith, that's how we're supposed to handle something like that. And I played some pastors doing the exact opposite. Name calling, not using any scriptures or talking what the Bible says, and not representing or modeling the behavior of what their calling says they should and have to do. It's a mandate. And I played some pastors who were just not doing that. KTC, the reason why you wouldn't have seen this on the news, period, because it goes against their narrative and they want illegals here. So they'll never highlight anything like that. They just won't. They can't, because it hurts their cause. You'll never see that on the news. The only way you'll see that on the news is if News Nation or Fox covers it. You're just not going to see that. Not going to happen. So now let's talk about Martin Luther King. And Charlie Kirk said some things, and I want to clear up what he said. Actually, I don't want to clear up what he said. I want to give context to what he said, and I want to play what he said. And I want you guys to hear what he has to say, not from the clip that was out there. And I saw this clip, and I'm like, here we go again. It is clearly designed to make people, I don't know, bring his legacy down. Whatever their purpose is, they hated him. They're part of a community. They want us to also hate him. So they do. This is just what they do. They've always done this. They've always done this. He said some things, and then, like I said, I'm going to play it. I'm not a fan of bashing someone when they're gone and they can't defend themselves. That goes for Martin Luther King, and it also goes for Charlie Kirk. I'm consistent. I'm very consistent on this. Whether I thought they're a good person or not, I might be able to say that, but what I'm not going to do is name call. Follow me here. The rest of this presentation is going to be touchy, controversial, even, maybe even conspiratorial. But what I'm about to say and what you're going to hear Charlie Kirk say are fact-based. Just so you know, they're fact-based. But it could still be wrong, which sounds weird. How could it be wrong and fact-based? How's that possible? The left's favorite civil rights heroes contributed to everything from this point forward. And Charlie Kirk was going off of information that was fully available and still fully available in our government National Archive. You can go to the website today and see that what he was saying is there. Could that information be wrong? Yes. But you can't hold him responsible for citing something that the government says is true. And I'll say why I know that it's true. Maybe I'll do that in a little bit. Oh, no. I dislike Republicans more than I dislike Democrats, because in my opinion, Republicans are weak. They're on the right side of most issues, and they don't stand on it. That's why I dislike them. I'm to the right of Republicans. So I'm From that perspective, I'm worse than a Republican. Before our leftist mindset kicks in, because we all grew up, most of us grew up with a leftist mindset and either grew away from that or so it's, I mean, there's few that may have always held more conservative perspectives. Before we start blaming J. Edgar Hoover and talk about how sick and crazy and he was sick and crazy. Before we go off on that route, pretty much all of the liberal leftist civil rights heroes were in on what happened and were going after Martin Luther King. FDR created the Office of Strategic Services, and that later became the CIA. Ironically, his wife, who was said to be a great friend of Martin Luther King, she was on the board of the NAACP, which was founded by mostly white people, but it was for colored people. Anyway, doesn't matter. Mostly white people found this organization. Eleanor was him. Eleanor was on that board, a big hero of civil rights, walking side by side with MLK, while her husband's CIA was tracking absolutely everything that Martin Luther King was doing. Walking right side by side, lock arm in some cases, literally. These are the people who are for you. These are the people who the left tells us are heroes. FDR, his wife, Eleanor Roosevelt, John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy, who was another friend, signed off on wiretaps to spy on absolutely everything that Martin Luther King did in his life. They still have all of this stuff, all of this information. So he signed off on this and allowed not just the FBI, but the CIA to go after his friend, Martin Luther King. The CIA is not even supposed to operate on U.S. soil. They're supposed to be for external threats. He let them do that. He signed off on it. We don't hear anything bad about FDR, Eleanor, or John F. Kennedy. I mean, not from the left, at least. And I'm going to give proof that that happened in a little bit, but just bear with me. Lyndon Johnson, another civil rights hero, continued the wiretapping program of Martin Luther King. They just kept doing this all the way till he was gone. Oh, Carlos, I'm not going to go heavy on any of that. Like I said, I don't want to smear the guy. But what I want to show is it is okay to have an opinion on him without being called a racist, because it very well have nothing to do with race. Robert F. Kennedy is another one, senior. Everyone rants and raves about all of these people, all these heroes. He was in charge of spying on Martin Luther King. He was in charge of digging up dirt on his friend. Do you know this? Have you heard about this? These are facts. All of this is facts. These are all liberal civil rights heroes. These are the people who you'll read, or we did read when we were growing up, who impacted the world in such a great way during the civil rights era. They were all spying on the other guy that they said had a huge role to do with our freedoms, which he did. He did. But I'm going to give you some information, and I'm not going to go too much into it because I'm not sure it's necessary. And I actually would discourage you guys from looking into it. But if you want the facts, I will point you in a direction where you can get them. I don't recommend you looking into it. I'm just gonna say it. Ms. Just Exactly. I don't recommend this. What I'm gonna go over is just his words, what he said, and why it's not racist to say them. That's what I'm gonna do. Martin Luther King never claimed to be a socialist. But he did want full government reconstruction, a restructure, and he wanted redistribution of wealth. That's socialism. There's a reason he didn't say it. And he said why in classified documents that are now available in our national archives. He would never publicly say that he was not a socialist or communist for that reason. He just didn't want, he knew how it looked at the time, especially with the Cuba, Soviet Union, he knew how it looked, so he wouldn't outright come out and say these things. And he was given a lot of money by communists, a lot of communists, and they were grooming him to be the first Black president of the United States. This was their goal. They wanted a communist president in this country. I'm not making any of this up. This isn't even a dispersion on him. This is just what happened. These are facts. And again, I can point you to where you can find all of this out. There's no opinions happening right now coming out of my mouth. So he knew this was happening, and he intentionally refused to promote any idea that he was communist. But he was very close with 8 prominent communists in the 60s when he was at his peak. The 2 main ones were, one is a guy named Stanley Levison, and I have a tab just so you guys can see who he is. And there's a reason I'm doing this. Again, when Charlie Kirk says the things that he says, I can see why people will be like, oh my God, I can't believe he would say that. So I'm just giving you the information that Charlie Kirk knew and did not go into it. And I think he did that for a reason, but he encouraged people, if you want to know what I'm talking about, you can go look into it. Look into it yourself. Because there's no real interest in smearing him. But to say he's a great guy or to say he's not a good guy aren't racist takes. They're just not. It's an opinion. And you're allowed to have an opinion. So this is who Stanley Levison was. I'll make it all the way. He was involved and influenced by the Communist Party. His official membership status was complicated, and he denied ever being a member of the CPUSA, Communist Party, when he was under oath. So he lied. It wasn't even up for debate, which is really weird because when he passed, they're going to get everything on you. And sources from the FBI, historians indicate that he was dedicated communist who advanced communist interests, served as a major financial manager for the party from the 1940s and 1950s, became a top advisor to Martin Luther King. He was also, Martin Luther King described him as one of his best friends. Again, this is not a gotcha or anything. This is just what was. You can look this up anywhere. When Martin Luther King decided that he needed a personal assistant because it was getting really hectic. His meteoric climb happened really fast. Stanley, or Mr. Levison, suggested this person. Hey, I know somebody. I have a great idea. He recommended he hire. Let's see, why won't it let me share? He recommended his best friend, and his best friend's name was Hunter Pitts Odell, or Jack. Jack was a civil rights organizer and intellectual who served as a trusted advisor to Martin Luther King before being forced to resign due to his past association with the Communist Party. Again, it wasn't even being hid who these people were. And you have to take into consideration during these years, the Soviet Union, Cuba, all this stuff was going on where that's the enemy. Literally, they were considered the enemy. Let me get rid of that. Um, there were 8 people, and I got them. I actually put them on the screen right here. There are 8 people. I'm not putting them on this screen, but I have it up so I get their names right. So you have Stanley Levison, Hunter Pitts, Odell, a man named Clarence Jones, Harry Watchell, Cordy Vivian, Randolph Blackwell, Lawrence Reddick, and Bayard Rustin. Who are all these people? They were all communists, all of them. And they started a thing called the SCLC, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. That was Martin Luther King's baby. That was his project. Everyone, there it is. Let's see. Everyone who developed this project were communists. All 8 people that I named. This is the Southern Leadership or Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Civil rights organization founded in 1957 by Martin Luther King. It ignores the communist ties to coordinate and support nonviolent efforts to desegregate the South and advance civil rights for African Americans. Sounds great, all great. Actually did great things, but it was started by communists. And they were doing these things so they can usher him in to be the first communist president of the United States. I don't know if he knew that. I doubt he knew that. I don't even know if I care because it didn't happen. And we're in a different time now where we don't have to worry about well, we still have to worry about stuff. But this is history. This is real, and I need to tell you guys this. So again, when you hear Charlie Kirk say what he says, this is why he says what he says. He only had the issue with communism, Martin Luther King, because communism does not allow for faith. And he was still a man of faith, even though he didn't. It's really weird. He believed in Jesus Christ, but didn't believe in the resurrection. So I don't even know what faith he was. His church in Montgomery was a Baptist church. But I'm pretty sure they believe in the resurrection. That's besides the point. Anyway, none of this is a secret. This is all known. We just need to know this stuff because I wasn't taught any of this stuff. I learned all this in 2017, 2018. And Malcolm X spoke out against all of this stuff. He warned against white liberals. He talked about communism, and because of his delivery, he was seen more as militant and not celebrated the way Martin Luther King gets celebrated. He's not held in that kind of reverence. And he openly would tell liberals he just didn't like them. We'll just leave it at that. He didn't want help. And he gets crap to this day because he actually said something similar to what I said about desegregation. He didn't really care. He just wanted the ability for Black people to do what they needed to do. And he just wanted to handle it a little bit differently. And he was very, very, very outspoken. And he gets pushed to the side because they had a different figure that they were about to prop up to be president of the United States. So to this day, Martin Luther King is seen differently than most people, period. I know coming up in school, I was taught that this guy was, I mean, if you talk about great Americans, he's going to be up there on the list. He's up there with even non-Americans, Mother Teresa. He was up there with Gandhi. They put him up there, like really, really up there. And Malcolm X, he's more so now he's starting to get a little bit more, I don't want to say accepted because he's always been accepted. He just maybe from mainstream, he's getting more mainstream acceptance. But he wasn't about the social justice like Martin Luther King was. And it's arguable right now that our social programs that came out during those times hurt the Black community because it created dependencies and again, that's a whole other conversation. Martin Luther King did amazing things. His speeches were phenomenal. They inspired people. Even if they weren't communists, you can still be inspired by his words. You can still be inspired by his I Have a Dream speech. It doesn't change that part of history because what they were trying to do never happened. But again, a case can be made that a lot of the things within the civil rights movement turned into a problem for the Black community, getting men out of the homes, incentivizing women to have more children out of wedlock, and then the government gives you money. All that stuff came from back then, and liberals have always been this way. Liberals have always been this way. They're to this day, they want to coddle us. They want to give us things so that we need them and that we listen to them. And every election cycle, they say, hey, listen to me. I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you. Instead of just teaching us to fish. It's what it is. The John F. Kennedy Records Act of 1992. And this is going to maybe shed some light to you guys as to why they would not release these files. The JFK Records Act of 1992 said that for whatever reason, the government had 25 years to release all the information on that assassination, as well as Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination. Government didn't do it, which is weird, really weird. And what they did it on, let me see, I have a definition. I'm not going to put this up because it's not really important. Well, it is kind of, but it's not. It says the president could only withhold documents if their release would cause identifiable harm to national security, which I thought was interesting phrasing. It wasn't a threat of harm, it was identifiable harm. And when I looked it up, it says, identifiable harm is compromising, confidential, foreign relations sources, or intelligence activities. That's the only one to me that made sense, because the intelligence activities of the CIA and FBI are the biggest problem with what happened with Dr. Martin Luther King. They were spying on him everywhere he went. Every time he went to a hotel, a motel, at home, they had him wiretapped. When he was traveling with people, they were wired. They literally monitored his every move, and it's all the civil rights leaders who were doing it, from at the highest level, from president to the attorney general, RFK. 2 presidents were doing this to him. So they did not want us to know that it's identifiable harm. That was a reason. Well, they said it, that's what it was. But they didn't break it down and say, oh, well, we can't really release everything on this. And they would say it's sources and methods. We don't want people to know how our government gets intel and all this stuff, which is, like, it's laughable for that to be the reason, but it falls, that explanation is the only one that made sense, because all the other explanations were military, nuclear weapons, regular weapons, foreign intel operations. So they didn't withhold JFK's assassination under those grounds, or Martin Luther King's information under those grounds. They held it under identifiable harm, potentially. Weird. And 2017, Donald Trump said, release it all. And they refused. And the CIA and FBI convinced him, hey, let's hold off on these files here. And we'll put a summary out on what we were doing to Martin Luther King Jr., but we'll put that summary in the middle of all the JFK files. We'll just say we were not going to release the assassination files on MLK. They're hiding it for what? In 2017 was a 25-year mark, and that's when they said to Trump, CIA and FBI looked at it and said, yeah, you shouldn't do this. You shouldn't release this. Because our people in 1994 looked at all this and determined you should not release this. That's as far as they went. I'm not even sure they explained to him what, but there ended up being a total denial of release of these documents. So 2017 came and they put that one summary, it's 20-something pages. They put that summary in the middle of JFK's files and released it. And some people saw it. Most people know nothing about this. There's horrible things about Martin Luther King in there. And those horrible things were gotten through wiretapping by our civil rights heroes of the 60s, 50s, and 60s. That's just what it is. So they cited national security concerns and withheld these documents. And they gave out the summary again. So they did give some of the information. The rest of it came out this year. And that's where it's really, really, really ugly and really detailed. I don't recommend anyone look at it, but if you want it, add me on X, DM me, I'll send you the document file numbers. If you want it that bad, I'll do that. Now I'll put my X, it's actually in my description, but I'll put my X in the chat later. It was one box of 23 documents in a file is what it was. I said 20 something, but it's 23. And it was just that one small box on Dr. Martin Luther King. Nobody knew about it. Like I said, it's 2017. Now, like I said, this year they released over 200 documents, almost 300 documents on Martin Luther King. And it's the details of those 23 pages. I don't see a reason to even release those. But now I know that they didn't want to release them for a few reasons. One, you have the government spying on who we were taught our whole lives, at least through elementary school, a great man who did great things, but we were spying on him because he's a communist. So they didn't want us to know this. They didn't want to know that communist was being groomed and almost became the president of the United States, because that's what they were trying to do. But they also don't want to paint him in a bad light, in my opinion. It seems like they didn't want to paint him in a bad light because we've already praised this man and we've already propped him up over the last almost 60 years since he died. He died in 68. So what do? Do we release the information? No, we're going to hide it and just leave him where he is up here on his own pedestal. Because if we release this information, it's going to make him look bad, but it's really going to make us look bad because we're the ones who spied on him. So Trump got in January. One of the first things he did, he actually ran on it. I'm going to release everything on JFK and everything on Martin Luther King. And he was doing that because he was getting pressured, ironically, by civil rights activists. We need to know what happened to MLK. I would suggest that they did not want to put it out, and these are the reasons why. And I don't even know if it's all negative. I just know because he's been propped up, why paint him in a bad light now? Because it definitely paints him in a bad light. And I think, honestly, the government just wanted to leave it alone and hope people would stop asking. I think that's something similar is going on right now with the Epstein files. That's my opinion. So you notice I'll always say, when it's my opinion, I'm going to give you guys my opinion. I'm going to say that's my opinion. Everything else I'm talking about here is facts. And it's verifiable because it is literally in our national archives. And the reason why I believe what the CIA and FBI put in those documents, because first of all, it was in real time. They're documenting all this stuff. They're wiretapping it and they're transcribing it in real time. Could they have been lying at the time? Absolutely. Absolutely. But they tried to not extort him. They tried to get Martin Luther King Jr. to unalive himself with the information that they had. And the only way, in my opinion, you can do that is if you show them the truth. I know this about you. I know this about you. I know this about you. Your life is over. You're in great standing with the American people. Your wife will go on to still be hailed as who she is. Your kids will have a legacy. You can go. That part is true. They proposed that he unalive himself after they started showing him how much they really knew about him. And it was nasty. I don't think they were lying, because they wouldn't have hid it. If they wanted to smear him, they would have released all of this 60 years ago, almost 60 years ago. That's what they did to JFK. They released all his personal information. They hated him. But because MLK was on this pedestal, they were caught because of how they found out all this information, and how they were also praising him at the same time. And how do you navigate that? You shut your mouth and just hide it. Now, mind you, when Charlie Kirk made his statements, the 2017 stuff came out. So he had a summary of things that Martin Luther King did. And that's why I wanted to go over this before I play his words, because when you hear his words, it's going to say, oh, how dare this white dude talk like this about MLK? He's just making this up. He's trying to smear Martin Luther King. No, he was actually saying facts. Facts. So why now? Nobody's talked about it. Have you heard anybody talking about it? The only reason, and Charlie Kirk's going to give context as to even why he said what he said, but there has been no real expose on this. I think there's been some books written, but those were back in 2017. Right now, like 4 or 5 months ago, they released the details, and it's nasty. What's going on, NC Lady? NC Lady B1 is in the building. Shut up, NC Lady B1. They didn't know. I guess it's still too fresh. We may get books. I hope we don't. I don't see the point. I don't see the reason for it. Leave him where he is. Leave everyone with the perception that we have. I just don't. Like, if I found out, my wife and I were just talking about this. If I found out that my grandfather did horrible things, but I held him in really high regard, why would I want to change it now? I wouldn't, like, and it's not, I don't know. I just don't see 60 years after the fact somebody doing a big expose to expose Martin Luther King. I don't see the point of it. But anyway, with everything I just laid out, I want you guys to listen to his words and take it as he knew something that I didn't know, and what he's saying is true. and it's based on FBI, CIA documents, or one document that was in the National Archives at the time that he said this. This is Jason Whitlock. Everybody, I won't say everybody hates Jason Whitlock. A lot of people don't like him either, but over the last 4 or 5 years, he really has made a turn. I've seen it, because everyone knows, well, not everyone. Most guys know who Jason Whitlock is, former football player, and he's a sports commentator, but he's really, really, really gone towards Christianity over the last 4 or 5 years. He'd never talked about it before, and he wasn't a very good person. So he grew to have a lot of people dislike him. And he, in my opinion, it's very, very obvious that he's more impacted now than he was. See, a lot of people don't like him. I really didn't like him. But I'm watching him now, and I'm watching a transition, and I can respect the transition, because it's not easy to go from how he was then to how he is now for this long without people seeing through it. And I don't see through it yet. He sold me that he's genuinely at least trying to be a better man. And I can respect that. It's, who am I to say, he's being fake, he's not a real Christian? I can't do that. I can just watch his behaviors and say, okay, well, we'll see what he says. We'll see why he says what he says and what his justifications are. And he usually uses scripture now, which is, I find it interesting. I don't know if he's using it correctly, But I think he's genuinely trying to do something different, and I can respect it. He's not really the issue in this video. It just so happened to happen on his Fearless program. So Charlie Kirk came up, and these are his words.
I think we all are in agreement that we needed to end segregation and Jim Crow laws, and black people needed full citizenship. To what degree the 1964 Civil Rights Act guaranteed that, I think we all agree that's great. But we have to have a discussion about how that Civil Rights Act is being used and piggybacked by the LGBTQ, same-sex marriage. Right. It's opened the door for other things to be piggybacked on top of it that I don't think are good for America. And I think this is an important conversation that we have to have, and you've been participating in that conversation.
Well, before he even gets going, I've been saying this for how long? I said they use our civil rights and to make it about other stuff that bill had nothing to do with. Nothing. And they're pushing these agendas using our pain, our suffering, our history. And then they bring us in and say, hey, wait, this is about you guys too. Join us. We support you. And we end up in these fights for people who they don't care. They really don't care. They just care about their agenda. They use us. They literally are using the Civil Rights Acts, all of them, to promote their stuff. They've been doing it this whole time. And then what's ironic is the whole time they were doing it, they're celebrating those people that were spying on the one guy who we put up there in our own little social Mount Rushmore, Martin Luther King. They were harming him the whole time, trying to get him to unalive himself. Anyway.
Yeah, thank you. It's an awfully provocative conversation I started. I stand by it, and I appreciate the opportunity. I mean this sincerely, Jason, to explain it. Because there's some people on the right that have been just throwing insults, and they would never have me on the show to explain it. So there was one poll that prompted me to speak out about this, Jason. And I'm a Christian, and I love the Lord, and I know you do too. It's the most important thing in my life, is when I saw a Gallup poll that Martin Luther King's approval rating was 96%, and Jesus Christ's approval rating was 90%.
So, with that context, now you can say, whoa. No man should outpoll Jesus. So what it does is it causes you to look at the other guy and literally compare him to Jesus. So that's what prompted Charlie Kirk's remark. I don't even know if it would have ever been a discussion had some poll wherever he said, I already forgot who did the poll, but it prompted him to say, wait a minute, who? Nobody, but not even the guy who is put on this pedestal can compare to Jesus. Like, we have a problem in society if we put any man and he polls higher than Jesus, even if you're not a Christian. Like, this is just, there's a context. Did any of those videos say why he said what he said? No, they're 13 to 30 seconds long clips showing him say he's not a good guy. Just saying.
I said, okay, we have a problem. I said, if a man who, of course, said some admirable and heroic things, but let's be honest, lived a colorful life, and I'll get into that, has a higher approval rating than Christ our Lord, now you have my curiosity. I pair this with a series of shows, episodes, and also research studies we've done on our show, prompted by Christopher Caldwell's excellent book, Age of Entitlement, asking the question of what is the Civil Rights Act? What was it trying to solve and accomplish? How was it sold to the American people at the time? And how is it thought of now by the modern academic consensus? And the modern academic consensus, which now is pushing DEI and wokeism, they look at the Civil Rights Act and the Civil Rights era as a new American founding. And they look at MLK as the founder. They look at everything before was racist and bigoted and awful, including George Washington and Lincoln, and we refounded the country in a new regime with a new philosophy, dare we say, around anti-racism, and Martin Luther King is the unassailable figure that will then say this is new America. Now, understand at the time, of course, there were legislative priorities that needed to be done by the federal government to stop bitter segregation. I've always held that. But the Civil Rights Act went way further than that. And Christopher Caldwell's book talked about the American people thought they were getting minor legislative adjustments to say that segregation based on race is evil and wrong. In reality,
Now, though affirmative action is DEI in practice, DEI is the philosophy. Affirmative action is the actions. So it literally is the same thing. It's just a part of it, though. But does he sound like I just didn't like the Civil Rights Act. He's giving a reason why. And he's telling you where it came from and how the whole conversation started with somebody polling Martin Luther King higher than Jesus. That's where this is coming from. What's up, Lou?
what they got was the birthing of a permanent deep state of bureaucrats that were looking for racism where it didn't exist, eventually with affirmative action quotas and hiring practices, expanded beyond race into LGBTQ type issues. And so what the civil rights era really birthed was this idea that it's the federal government's job not just to say that discrimination is wrong, but to actively go against any sort of disparate outcome and try to even the score under the guise of equity. Those are two different things, Jason. And most conservatives think of the Civil Rights Act and the promise of Martin Luther King in his beautiful statement. And I said this all along, it is a beautiful statement. I want America, I dream of a day where people are not judged based on the color of their skin, but the content of their character. I'm 100% bought into that. But
so again, so far, where are we? He's saying that there are other agendas that use this act because the act was vague and allowed people to the point where I'm not going to get into everything that's happening right now under the civil rights umbrella, but transitioning was, they were trying to say procedures are a civil right, and then transitioning is part of that, and then transitioning kids is part of that. This is what he's talking about. DEI, there's equality, which is an equal opportunity for something, right? You should be able to have the opportunity to achieve the same thing as everyone else, as long as you work toward it like they work toward it. Equity is you need to have the same outcome. That's where affirmative action came from. You can't guarantee everyone have the same outcome because they have to want it the same as you. So you could be a hard worker and you work your way up to management and they say, you know what, you've done a great job. We're going to give you a raise. You're going to make, we'll just say 75 grand, right? Then you have somebody else come in. They're a new hire. They know nothing about the business. Hey, I need you to train this guy. And he's getting paid $75,000. He's guaranteed the same outcome as you, even though he's done nothing to earn it. You're going to feel some kind of way. But DEI, the equity, is saying we need to be diverse on the outcomes and inclusive of all these groups. And they decide the groups. So everyone needs to have the same outcome is not the same thing as everyone has the same ability to work towards an outcome. It's a big difference. That's why when he said the content of your character, not the color of your skin, DEI is literally the opposite of what he said. Literally the opposite. They're saying, no, we need outcomes based on the color of your skin, not the content of your character or any merit or anything. We just need this. This is just what we need to do. You need to hire 50% black people or 30% black people, 30% white people, 30% Hispanic people. You have to do it. Qualifications don't matter. You just have to do it. That's not what even MLK stood for. And he's a communist. And he didn't even say this. That's how far left these people are. And it's outrageous. Sorry, back to him.
But that was not MLK's entire philosophy. In fact, after the Civil Rights Act was passed, after the Great Society was passed, after the Voting Rights Act was passed, Martin Luther King became more radical, talking about we need to restructure society, reconfigure society. We need to he almost said that he called for reparations. He didn't use that term, to be perfectly fair, but you could insinuate he talked about how we have not done a good enough job to have moral and economic justice. All that to reiterate one other part, Martin Luther King was a self-described minister.
He participated, at the very least, in dozens of extramarital affairs on his wife. That is well documented. He definitely participated in orgies. And according to certain government documents, which again, they're FBI documents, so they might be real, they might not be, because we don't trust the FBI, that he very well might have encouraged and laughed while a woman was being raped in a hotel room in one of his very famous movies. When a man of the cloth who says he's a man of God does that sort of pattern or behavior, I don't think he should have a higher approval rating than Jesus. So how do we explain that? We explain that we have built this mythology around MLK in the modern era. Now, some myths are important, Jason. I'm actually okay with certain myths. I'm okay with certain people of history being larger than life and something we aim towards and something that we want to lift up. But we must be very careful when we do that. I think people that we lift up should be Washington, should be Lincoln, should be Jefferson, the actual founders of the country, where MLK, in my personal opinion, and based on every objective analysis, he actually gave us more race focus and less emphasis on character and conduct. Because here we are 60 years later. Do we talk about race less or more in the last couple of decades? I'm not only blaming MLK for this, but his core driving philosophy was not about a colorblind society. That is a line in one of his speeches. He would actually be closer to a race Marxist, almost akin to a DEI type philosopher if you go deep into his writings, especially later in his life. So I'm glad that we went after it. We did it in a very thoughtful way. And I think we as conservatives and Christians must reconsider some of the mythologies and some of the icons and the symbols that we hold up, especially as we try to reorient ourselves in a broken culture.
So for this falls under the Marxism and restructuring and redistribution of wealth ideas that Martin Luther King had. He did say it. He just flew by it. But there's no reason for somebody on the right to highlight that because we don't want that. We don't want reparations. I actually did a live a long time ago with Mel Dubb, and we talked about reparations. He actually gave me a good scenario of reparations that I agreed with, but monetary, I don't. But again, these are all what he's basing what he's saying on is the released information on the summary of released information on MLK. Doesn't sound good, but it's nowhere near what the reality is. It's not racist. What he's saying is not racist. He's literally giving information that a lot of people didn't know, but it's not even based on race. He's actually talking about the exact opposite on how those policies hurt our race. She said she wanted reparations. Hey, again, it's all opinions. Mel Dubb's idea to me was phenomenal, and he talked about education reparations and how it would be done, and I'm good with that. I'm definitely good with that. Monetary, I don't think it's going to help as many people as other people think. And the one question that I always ask that I've never heard answered is how much is enough that we won't revisit this conversation. That's the conversation I always, that usually ends the conversation, I should say. But education was the best, the only logistical idea I've heard on reparations that makes sense to me, and that's doable, very, very doable.
And so, just for my understanding, because I caught.
Sorry, before he goes, I put that little reminder up there. If you can hit the like button, that would be amazing.
Went to this rather late, and not in real time. Was this a series of shows you were doing, or did you write something specifically that triggered people?
Yeah, so it was a series of things. I gave a speech at AmFest. It was a breakout speech, and we posted it as a podcast where I said MLK was not a good guy. He's not who you think he is. And I will stand by that. I think a man who calls himself a minister, who cheats on his wife dozens of times, is not someone I'd consider a good guy. I'm not going to use the word evil. I never said that. I said not a good guy. Wired magazine caught wind of that, and there was one sidebar. I said, hey, on MLK Day, we might do like a 4-minute segment, kind of talking about this. So they run this huge preemptive story, Jason. Charlie Kirk plans to go after MLK. And, kind of going off your speech, I could have done the old conservative thing. I could have hid in the corner, said, you know what, I'm so sorry, how dare I? Because I saw the chatter increasing. I saw the right-wing intelligentsia saying, no, Charlie, it's a career ender. You don't do this. You just say MLK was awesome, and you don't ask questions, and you just kind of walk away. I said, I'm not going to do that anymore. I think that kind of attitude is destructive and wrong, and we felt the pressure that day. We were getting text messages of people saying, Charlie, this is going to end your career. Charlie, you'll never be back in decent circles. And I said, you know what, honestly, I don't subscribe to that. I'm going to trust the Lord. I know what we're saying is true. We had some very good guests on. So we did an hour episode, Jason. That was it. We did a 1 hour episode, very factually, with Vince Everett Ellison, who's an amazing black historian and author. He's excellent, who went through this. And then we had a conversation candidly with one of our producers where we talked about, hey, Civil Rights Act, good intentions. It's gone out of control. It should have been more minor in its legislative adjustments. And that was it. And the response was disappointing because some people, instead of dealing with the substance and or my very public track record of hating bigotry and racism and also associating with people of all sorts of different backgrounds, they started to call me racist. And I'm not going to get into the people who did that, but I was disappointed because I said, listen, guys, you could hate what I'm doing. You could criticize it. But if you're just going to throw the R word around like a Frisbee because I dare to question somebody who I consider to be a false idol of the modern cult of anti-racism, when in reality there are much better figures such as Billy Graham in the 1960s who had a lot more to do with the passage of the Civil Rights Act, who gets no credit than Martin Luther King. People forget Billy Graham had White House Oval Office meetings. Billy Graham led the Crusades for a moral awakening, and he led a sterling life as far as being loyally married to his wife and lifting up what it means to be a solid Christian. And do we have, and final thought, of course, is there's only one person in the 20th century that gets a federal holiday, and it's Martin Luther King. I can name at least a dozen people more deserving in the 20th century of a federal holiday than MLK. And if you think at it from the premise that the modern left looks at the civil rights era as the new founding, as more important than 1776, I think it really starts to make sense. It was one episode. Twitter freaked out. I very well could have, took a knee and apologized. I don't play ball like that anymore. I stand by our comments, and I'm glad the conversation that ensued.
So as I listen to you unpack that, on this show, and on this show, I would say a year ago, I'm sure you know Virgil Walker, I'm sure, with G3 Ministries. And Virgil's a regular on this show. Can we pan the camera to these four guys? I got Thomas Jefferson, Booker T. Washington, Abraham Lincoln, and Frederick Douglass.
Before he goes over that, I want to just address this real quick. So it wasn't about just cheating. He didn't base it strictly off of that. He gave a few things. I don't know if you heard him earlier. He gave a couple things. But I would agree with you on that. My whole reason for presenting all of this is so that you can see, okay, maybe it wasn't race-based. Maybe it was everything he's saying. It's a very large context to what he's saying. And this has nothing to do. I just think it's much easier to say, you know what, that's his opinion and move on, instead of waiting till he dies and bringing this back up and then pretending like he didn't have all of these justifications for what he said, and pretending he didn't say literally that I have no issue with A, B, C, and all of the things that they're trying to make it look like he is. He literally disavowed all of that and said, this is based on a poll that had Martin Luther King above Jesus. I said, well, wait a minute, what is all this? Like, that's what this is. And it's a very weird thing. But the point of it is to get people to not like him. That's the only reason why this is coming back out of nowhere. That's the only reason they're bringing this back up. It's the only reason why this is here. I think most people know he wasn't in that aspect, but that's not the conversation. So there's no reason to say, and by the way, this white guy isn't a good person either. Everyone on the right in politics says that. So it wouldn't be abnormal for one of us to say JFK was definitely not a good man. But JFK wasn't put above Jesus. And that's the point of all of this.
On our wall here. And at one point, Booker T. Washington was not up there. Martin Luther King was up there. And Virgil Walker wrote a couple of pieces breaking down Martin Luther King's flawed theology. And amazing pieces, breaking down his flawed theology and his flirtation with Marxism and all of that. And that perhaps Martin Luther King didn't really see Jesus Christ as our Lord. He didn't believe in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Yes. and things like that. And so we had brought Virgil on the show, and we probably talked about it for 30, 45 minutes. And then probably over the next month, I dealt with what Virgil wrote and said. And I said, we're going to bring Martin Luther King down. We're going to put Booker T. Washington up. So just from a theological standpoint, I've already been there with you. And it's not that I don't dislike Martin Luther King. I don't have any animus towards Martin Luther King. But I'm like, do we really understand him in context theologically? And then to your point, which I've had to consider, it's like, hey, what all came along with the Civil Rights Act of 1964? And what did it open the door for? And that's important because the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And so these were good intentions. But if that tree produces poisonous fruit, I'm going to question that tree. And so, so you can, people watch this and say, well, hold on, man, Charlie's second guessing Martin Luther King's personal life and his morality. Well, the founders, they owned slaves and they weren't perfect and blah, blah, blah. And so I don't want to really evaluate the founders' personal life, or I really don't have much interest in evaluating Martin Luther King's. But if the Civil Rights Act is Dr. King's achievement and Thomas Jefferson's achievement is the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, I'll say, well, the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, look at the fruit that it produced. It was the justification for ending slavery. It was the justification for ending segregation and Jim Crow. It was the justification. It's the foundation we stood on to create the freest, safest, most opportunity-rich place on the planet for everybody, but for black people in particular. And so if their documents produce that fruit and the Civil Rights Act produced same-sex marriage, I got some questions about the Civil Rights Act. Should there have been some limiting principles installed in this? Let's have a conversation about the civil rights, and let's take Martin Luther King and anybody off a pedestal, and let's just deal with their tree and what fruit did it produce, and we have to be man enough to have that discussion.
That's beautifully said, Jason. And if you go down to the details of the Civil Rights Act, what could have been achieved through prudent legislative action was actually ended up done is that there was about 1% or 2% of it, and it built this massive anti-racist federal bureaucracy that wasn't immediately felt, actually. But 10 years, 20 years later, all of a sudden we get these bureaucrats going after admission standards, and they say, well, you have to have affirmative action because they introduced disparate outcome, saying that, well, your outcomes aren't the same, therefore you're a racist institution. Like, no, we're not a racist institution. It just so happens that there's other factors. And of course, Thomas Sowell's amazing book, Discriminations and Disparity, or Disparity and Discrimination, is perfect on this. And we must understand that you cannot have the modern woke enforcement without the basis of the Civil Rights Act. Now, that's not to say that every part of the Civil Rights Act is awful and terrible, but all of a sudden, when you give the federal government power to police private business, to police private action, to come in, for example, with the EEOC, which is at times overreaching, at times can get into small businesses' private affairs, that could be a death sentence to a fledgling business that's trying to make it to operate right now, and then all of a sudden it's metamorphosized, and this is one that I think your audience will find in a great agreement. Now all of a sudden the trans thing is under the Civil Rights Act. So that what was once, the intent was, hey, and I totally am sympathetic to this, that you have a black family that's driving on an expressway in the Natchez Trace in Mississippi, and they're running out of gas, and the only gas stations are white owned and operated, and they say, yeah, sorry, blacks aren't allowed to get gas, and they have to pull over, and they're out of gas on the side of the Natchez Trace in central Mississippi, and they have to wait for a nice good Samaritan to pull over and give them gas. I don't want to live in that country. I think that a law that said, no, that black family has to be given gas is a good law. Let me be perfectly clear, okay? That could have been done without creating a massive, now multi-100,000 person basic standing army throughout all the federal bureaucracies that is beyond the idea of going after a couple states and a couple jurisdictions. And then the courts, and this is what's important, Jason, what the Civil Rights Act did because of the fanfare and because of the celebration and because of how it's thought of, is that in most law schools, the Civil Rights Act is studied and revered more than the U.S. Constitution. That is a fact. It is studied and revered more than the Bill of Rights. It's not. It shouldn't be, meaning it's a law, okay? The Bill of Rights and the Constitution is the foundational laws of the land. The Civil Rights Act is cited more, it is used more. For example, not the Civil Rights Act, but its sister, the Voting Rights Act, is one of the reasons why we can't get voter ID and we get these goofy gerrymandered districts. And so much of the frustration that we see in our modern politics is because we have these foundational elements that actually none of us agreed to at the time. A majority of Americans wanted to see an end to segregation. They didn't want to see new segregation put forward eventually in anti-white hiring practices, affirmative action, or the entire federal bureaucracy having racial hiring quotas. And here's the most important thing, and I'm not saying it's because of this, but black America was getting richer, they were getting stronger, and families were largely still put together before the Great Society, Voting Rights Act, and Civil Rights Act. 60 years later, black America is in a worse position. I'm not saying it's because of the Civil Rights Act, I'm not saying it's because of the Voting Rights Act, but somewhere something went awry. And now we have more conversations about race, we have more fixation on race than any other time in my adult life.
His justification for saying what he said was literally the opposite of how they're making it look. They're making it look like he was racist when he's literally saying the purpose was supposed to be to help black people do better, We're not getting the results because we're allowing them to use that legislation for everything that hurts us. That was his real position. And I felt the need to do that. I felt compelled. I like, that's not what he said. Yes, he said, I didn't like the Civil Rights Act, but you can hear it's clearly more nuanced than a 13 or 30-second clip can cover. I just played like 10, 15 minutes of him explaining why the Civil Rights, I didn't like it. Why I said he's not a good guy. It's not, and I just need people to recognize this when you see it. Anything that's 10 to 30 seconds, 15 seconds is not going to be enough to get the real story. I don't care what it is. I don't care what it is. Look for it. If you don't want to look for it, come to me. Ask me to cover it. I'll cover it and I'll say, okay, let's see what really happened. Oh, okay. Here's the actual content or context and content. This is what really happened. And then you can say, I still disagree with him, but I don't, that's not a means to call this man racist after he's dead, after he was shot in the neck in front of his 2 kids and wife. Why now? Why are we even bringing this up? They're bringing it up to have black people support them because one of them shot a white man. That's it. And they want to make it into a racial issue. It's not. It's never been. Not with him. He led one of the largest, I forget what the age group was, but one of the largest black conferences ever thrown in this country. And it was for young black conservatives, people on the right, and Christians. But he's a racist. Why? Because some trans guy or some guy who was in love with a trans guy hated him, and they don't like what he said about that community. So we need black people to get with us and fight with us. We need to fight for civil rights. That's not our civil rights. Completely different. And you just killed a man. For what? For what? I would never bash him after he's dead, and I would never bash Martin Luther King after he's dead. But if you use a Christian lens, it's very easy to see how he could say, I don't think Martin Luther King was a good guy without saying he's racist. Oh yeah, it's definitely bigger than trans, for sure, for sure. I'm just throwing it out there because it still has nothing to do with us, is what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. They need it to always, every agenda needs us. Why? We are sensitive. When we hear civil rights, we're sensitive to the topic. We're extremely sympathetic because it's an emotional topic for us. And to be realistic, most likely we're going to side on that side because the sympathy. Even when it has nothing to do with us. We're saying, yeah, I understand, but right is wrong is wrong. And we join in. It's not good. It's really not good. But MLK was a pastor. He had a full congregation in Montgomery. Do I agree that he was a good person? I don't know. Do I agree that he was a bad person? I don't know. Do I think it matters what I think about him? No, not now. We're almost 60 years after the fact. He was flawed. I'm flawed. Everyone has flaws. I'm not going to prosecute this man after he's gone. If you really want to know what the FBI and CIA had on him, you can determine whether it's true or not or false. I don't recommend you look. I'm just going to tell you right now. If you really want to know, hit me up on X. I think she just put I think Just J or either Miss Phoenix just put my thing in there. DM me. I will send you the file numbers, but I'm telling you right now, it's not good. And I don't see any good that can come out of it. None. I genuinely don't see any good of looking into it. But I also want to say, when I talk about some of this stuff, I don't want you to think I'm just giving my opinion. So I will back it up with facts. If you want the facts, ask me. But if you just go to the National Archive website and type something in, it's going to be harder to find because they put it in with JFK's files, and the Martin Luther King assassination files don't have this in it. That's it. I spoke on that 23-page document. It's now over 300 pages that are available. I just don't think it's, I won't say worth. If you want to know, you want to know. You're American, you have a right to know. Just keep in mind that he's gone. His achievements are his achievements. His failures are his failures, and I just don't see the reason to go looking at transcribed wiretaps and thinking, hey, you know, if he's if the FBI was lying, the CIA was lying, okay. I mean, we have the information now. How can it change your life? Because even though they were trying to destroy him, they're also the ones who have held him up for all these years because they wouldn't release the negative stuff. And it's bad. He's been gone for almost 60 years. His legacy is great. But if somebody says, I don't like his legacy, it's their opinion. You don't have to call them racist. Unless they say it's because of his race. Then it's pretty clear to say it. The FBI working with the CIA is crazy. JFK authorized it. The great JFK. Clearly not a good person. Because why would he do that? And that was his friend. He authorized a whole nother government agency to work with the FBI to track everything, everyone, and anything that had to do with Martin Luther. That's not good. They're not even supposed to operate on U.S. soil. They made an exception, one of the first exceptions from them for them working together, because they say, oh, you know what, that could be a national threat. That's not internal, that's external. Go ahead and work with them. You guys can follow my friend. Let me know what you find. That's evil. To me. I don't know. If you want to know, like I said, hit me up. I'll send it to you. No issues. I don't recommend it. I don't recommend it, but as a matter of truth and to show you guys that I'm not just making this up, I'll give you the file numbers, and you can find them instantly with the file numbers. You don't need to go searching for it. You need to type in different prompts. You don't. But that task force from the 92 JFK Records Act, they looked at it in 1994 and decided it was never coming out. They had 25 years. They had to put something out, so they put something up, but it was small. Like I said, it was only 20-something pages. And it was the pressure of our people that ended up leading to a massive document dump. And none of it, in my opinion, is productive. None of it. There's a lot of people who knew, but it never went mainstream. It's still not mainstream. It's still not. And the evidence is people are getting mad saying he called him a bad guy. That makes him a racist. No, that just means he has an opinion and he knows what happened. And it's basing it off of our own stuff. It's sad. It really is sad. It really is sad. But everything, the old saying, be careful what you wish for or ask for. If you want this information, reach out. It's all in the National Archive. This is .gov. This isn't conspiracy theory. This isn't like a 9/11 website. This isn't any of that stuff. It's official, what they documented at the time. You can believe it. You don't have to believe it. But the reason why I do believe it is how they tried to not bribe, extort him into killing himself, literally. Can't do that with lies. And the other one is how hard they fought to not release the information. That's why I believe it, but I don't know. That's a matter of opinion. But they went over a decade investigating this guy, and they knew some great things about him. They knew some horrible things about him. So that's all I got. Anybody want to come up and say anything about that? Let me do that real quick before I just leave. If anyone wants to say anything, let's do that. Because that's all I really had today. Boom. That stupid heart thing always pops up right when I want to try to pin the link. If not, we're done here. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Anytime I do a live, I'm going to give you guys facts. And when I have an opinion, I will say, in my opinion. If I don't do that, you don't have to take it to the bank. You can look it up, obviously. And you may have the same information I do and just have a different opinion on it. That's totally possible. But I'm going to present the information that led me to my opinion. How about that? That's probably the best way to phrase it. And Uncle Will, I put you on the banner, but I forgot to thank you, sir. Always thank you for the Cash App, man. I appreciate it. I don't even like saying their names, G. Will. I don't even like saying their names. But yeah, you have to be a racist if you don't like them. Just Jay, I almost timed you out just now, but I'm not. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a drink of water. And I'm going to leave it at that. It's either Sunday or Monday. Our teams are going to play, and that's what it is. Unfortunately, my wife is a Cowboys fan, and we play. It feels like every other year. I don't think we play every year. It feels like every other year we have to play and be on opposite sides of that game. We try to go. We've been to the game, or the last game here. I wanted to go to the one in Chicago, but sip your water, mind your business. No one said that. I don't know why you said who said. No one said that. All right, so nobody's up here. I appreciate you, Miss Just J, even though you just typed that. G. Will, Baker Man, not worth it. Miss Genesis, thank you. I told you were going to be blue. Lou, thank you so much, sir. I appreciate you, man. Who else was in here? Miss Eve, thank you, young lady. I appreciate you. KTC, as always. Miss Lonnie, thank you. Oh God, here we go again. Now, Baker Man, you too. I'm gonna ignore those. I'm not putting any more of those comments up. Yeah, KTC, we could disagree all day. I like to respectfully disagree. Anthony was in here. What's up, man? I will always respectfully disagree on this kind of stuff. I'm not trying to convince you of anything or say you're wrong, or I won't even really say I disagree. I'll just give you my opinion if I feel it's even needed. Otherwise, I'm gonna leave it alone. And you have a right to think what you want, say what you want. Miss Mercy was in here. Thank you, Mercy T. Appreciate you. Did I say Lou? Lou, thanks, man. If I didn't say you, I'm scrolling up and I'm trying to look. Uncle L. Who's your team, Uncle L? Oh, are you from Philly? You're Eagles fan? Who else? Let's see. KMC was in here. Thank you, young lady. I think she said she was working. NC Lady B1. Shut up, NC Lady B1. NC Lady B1 in the building. Oh, yeah. Philly Eagles. Yeah, got you. Yeah, my wife hates the Eagles. It's like a visceral hate. Unhealthy hate. Like a real unhealthy hate. Carlos Franklin. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you for stopping in, man. Shout out Just J. Just gifted 5 memberships. Who else was in here? Welcome back, Carlos. I think that was I think this is the second or third time you came in here. Thanks, man. I appreciate you coming back. Pick and choose. Slim was in here. Henry Caldwell was in here. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you for stopping in, man. John Thompson, as always. Raiders. Oh boy, I'm sorry, man. He needs reparations. Baker Man Jr. needs reparations. He's a Raiders fan. Woof. I thought it was bad being a Bears fan. Miss Phoenix, as always. The Raiders. Oh boy. It's not even safe to go in their stadium. You get jumped by a bunch of Mexicans. Sorry. That was bad. That was really bad. Free J. Thanks. Thanks for coming, Miss Baker. I appreciate you. Island Milligan. Appreciate you. Raiders. Oh my God. How do you even get to the stadium? Oof. Okay. You'll rise. All right. Miss Shay, thank you very much for coming. I appreciate all of you guys. True Essence was in here. That was racist. Hey, it's your opinion. I appreciate everyone. Love you guys. Genuinely appreciate the support. Subscribe, please. Subscribe. Share this with somebody who will be offended or not. Doesn't matter.